It's 900 hours Central Africa time here on the Newsroom, Jumbo Africa. I'm Elvis Preslin.
Hey, good morning to you. My name is Kendall Mahamat.
We'll be with you until 12 o'clock today. Question today, Kendall. We're going to go back live a little bit later. The Social Security Agency, SASSA, and the South African Post Office, well, they are in negotiations after the significant pressure from MPs yesterday to come to an agreement on the payment of social grants. Now, they got until tonight at 6 o'clock.
Wow, that deadline is tight. Temba Kudi, the chairperson of SCOPA, has given them that particular deadline. We want to find out from you, what do you think needs to be done to resolve the social grants payment standoff? That's,
of course, until tonight, until 6 o'clock. They need to submit a report for the payment of the social grants. And Nhlanhla says, dismiss the leaders that are not competent, arrest those involved in corruption, and employ qualified people with influential positions. Hashtag SASSA and SAP.
And Collins says, I see that not being resolved anytime soon. Why? Well, the minister who says that the New York Stock Exchange is using the FBI to probe corruption. I doubt.
Well, this was all over social media yesterday. Minister indicating, of course, that it's twice now.
Yes.
The New York Stock Exchange has indicated that the FBI should.
The FBI? The
New York Stock Exchange.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, what do you make of that? Let us also know your thoughts on that. Now, on the poll today, triple murder accused Henry van Breda. He's back in court this morning. He's accused of killing his parents and his brother with an axe.
Wow. Axe-murderer on the large and Zaza estate near Stellenbosch. This is happening in January 2015. He's in court right now, and we want to find out from you, are you interested in the Henry van Breda axe murder case?
Well, so far there's a number of people coming in. We got 60% of you are saying yes, we are interested. Only 40% are saying no. We received some calls from people from the Platteland that were very interested in this particular case. So we'll go there live a little bit later as well.
Right. Now, Michael Bigamsola says, yes, I'm monitoring the case very closely. I hope justice will be served, and the crime has got no race. This kid wiped out his family. I'm curious on the motive.
Yes. One of those big cases in South Africa. Nhlanhla Lucky says, crime affects us all. Hashtag take charge, hashtag Cape Town High Court. It's all happening today.
Yeah,
we'll bring you more of those, but we're also asking you a sporting question. You know that we're one step closer to win the hosting of the World Cup 2023. That's the Rugby World Cup.
Absolutely. We've gone over the last hurdle, and all that remains right now is for the World Rugby Council, all the voters to ratify what the board has said. But we want to find out from you, can South Africa, in the current climate that we're in, afford to host the Rugby World Cup?
Yes, of course. That's the question. Zwandile says, of course we can afford. Remember, we hosted the biggest sport event in 2010. In the current climate, well, it's a different case, isn't it?
Yeah, Michael says, yes, we can afford any sporting code that we want to host, and we hope that we don't repeat the Durban 2022 Commonwealth Games saga. And when are we bringing the F1?
Whoa, now that's a big question. Kaya Lamy is waiting, isn't it? Ready to be raced, and yet
there's also a street circuit on the cards for Cape Town, remember?
Yes.
Using the Cape Town Stadium, and well, anyway, a conversation for another day.
Another conversation. That's where we got to leave it for now. Let's take a look at your news headlines. The cross-examination of triple murder accused Henry van Breda will continue this morning after the 22-year-old took the stand in his murder trial for the first time yesterday. We'll go there live a little bit later. Now, Parliament has instructed the Social Development Minister, Batabile Dlamini, and the Minister of Telecommunications, Siyabonga Cwele, to work out a deal for social grant payments by the Post Office. And authorities are treating an incident in Lower Manhattan in New York where a truck plowed into people on a bike path as an act of terror in the United States. Now, those are your headlines. But before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Point of interest, Elvis, before we get to the sports, what's the difference between what happened in Manhattan and that shooting at that concert, which was by a lone wolf and not a terror attack?
Well, that's the difference. You know, it's a lone wolf and a terror attack. It could be one or more. It's a bomb explosion. So they'll have to explain it to us. You know?
All right. Now, very strange how the United States defines terror attacks and lone wolf attacks by crazy people with guns. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
Madiba. Rocky. Madiba. United! Simply outstanding! Brilliant football in his eye-catching step!
SuperSport United used their African campaign experience to devastating effect, blowing hitherto undefeated Golden Arrows away with a 3-0 victory.
Perotti inside. Oh, it's an absolute screamer again.
The much-anticipated return match between Roma and Chelsea becomes a hopelessly one-sided affair as the Italian side nets 3 turns with no answer from Antonio Conte's men.
Roma 3, Chelsea 0. Roma leapfrogging Chelsea at the top of the table on a very, very bad night for the West London side.
And South Africa's Olympic gold medalist and world record holder Wade van Niekerk will miss next year's Commonwealth Games after suffering a serious knee injury in a celebrity touch rugby match. By all accounts, he'll only be back after about 6 months or so of rehab, and he will definitely be missing those games out on the Gold Coast. For now, it's all back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. The cross-examination of triple murder accused Henry van Breda will continue in the Cape Town High Court this morning. The 22-year-old van Breda took the stand in his murder trial for the first time yesterday. Now, he is accused of killing his parents and older brother with an axe at the De Zalze estate near Stellenbosch in January 2015. He has denied that he was responsible for the murders. According to his evidence, Van Breda was too fearful to help his family after they were attacked. Van Breda said his police statement following the incident was not recorded verbatim and that there were a number of discrepancies compared to his plea explanation. The state alluded to the unlikelihood of intruders breaching the estate security, committing a multiple murder and fleeing undetected. The case continues. Of course, we'll go there a little bit later, live to the court case. Now, a scholar patroller accused of sexually assaulting 87 learners at a primary school here in Soweto in Johannesburg is expected to appear in court today. The 54-year-old man has been charged with 3 counts of rape and 5 of sexual assault. Learners at the primary school had claimed that he sexually violated them. The school principal and senior management have since been suspended. In the wake of the sexual assault allegations, the Gauteng Premier, David Makura, appointed a special cabinet committee to ascertain the level of sexual violence as well as to put measures in place to strengthen the safety of learners in schools. A police task team in KwaZulu-Natal has taken over the investigation of a spate of recent killings in the province believed to be linked to taxi violence. In the last 2 weeks, 18 people have died. In the latest incident, the deputy chairperson of the Klip River Taxi Association was ambushed and killed in Ladysmith in the Midlands yesterday. Police say occupants of 2 vehicles opened fire on a bakkie transporting the deputy chair, his daughter, 2 bodyguards and his driver. The bakkie lost control and collided head-on with an oncoming minibus taxi. The taxi was transporting teachers. 5 were killed while 6 succumbed to injuries in hospital. A manhunt is underway for the armed gang linked to the deaths. Social Security Agency SASSA and the Post Office SAPO will return to the negotiating table today after significant pressure from MPs to come to an agreement over the distribution of grants. Now, the chair of Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts, Demba Gori, has given the 2 parties until 6 o'clock tonight to submit a report. Officials from SASSA and SAPO met overnight in order to solve the deadlock over the payment of the social grants. Both parties are expected to report back to Parliament this evening about the progress that they've made. SASSA is under instruction from the Constitutional Court to find a new service provider by April next year. Batabile Dlamini's department has been accused of dragging its feet. The Post Office, meanwhile, disputes claims that it's not good for the job. MPs across party lines express frustration. The Minister Dlamini was quizzed on her reasons for rejecting the Post Office. She says she would work with SAPO, but insisted she won't be bullied by them. Meanwhile, the IFP has written to the Speaker requesting an investigation into the process of finding a new service provider. And that, of course, why we're asking you this particular question. We want to find out from you about what do you think, what needs to be done in order to resolve the issue with SASSA and SAPO to pay grants. What's need to be done to resolve that social grants payment standoff? And are you concerned about this process? Seems like it's being delayed. We'll find out more and we'll cross their live a little bit later. You don't want to miss that. In news abroad, U.S. authorities are treating the attack in New York as an act of terror. A man in a rented truck ran down pedestrians and cyclists, killing 8 people and injuring at least 12 others.
The mayor of New York confirmed this was an act of terror.
It's a very painful day in our city. Horrible tragedy on the west side. Let me be clear that based on the information we have at this moment, this was an act of terror, and a particularly cowardly act of terror.
Police say the suspect is 29 years old but would not confirm his identity despite local media sharing his name. The truck used in the attack was a rental, while the suspect is reported to have had a paintball and a pellet gun in his possession when he was shot in the leg by police.
There's no evidence to suggest a wider plot or a wider scheme, but the actions of one individual who meant to cause pain and harm and probably death and the resulting terror. And that was the purpose.
President Donald Trump tweeted that this looked like another attack by a very sick and deranged person. Eyewitness accounts reveal that the suspect shouted Allahu Akbar, or God is great, when he exited the vehicle.
He did make a statement when he exited the vehicle, and if you just look at the MO of the attack, that's consistent with what's been going on. So that, along with the statement, has enabled us to label this a terrorist event.
Officials indicating that locals can expect a strong police presence across the city in the aftermath of this attack. The suspect is being treated in hospital, but is expected to make a full recovery. Any future court appearances, of course, will be contingent on that. Sherman Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.
Now that's your news for now. The United States has finally lifted 20-year-old economic sanctions against Sudan in a move that's been welcomed by Khartoum. Washington says that President Omar al-Bashir's government has made significant progress in recent years, hence it's revoking the 2-decade embargo. Now this relates to the cessation of hostilities in conflict areas, improving humanitarian access in war-torn Darfur, and working with the U.S. on regional conflicts and the threat of terrorism. Khartoum's commitment to implement the UN Security Council resolutions on North Korea also seem to have warmed up diplomatic relations with Washington. Now, for more on the recent lifting of the economic sanctions against Sudan, we are joined in our Pretoria studios by Sudan's Deputy Ambassador to South Africa, Ubazit Mohammed. A very good morning to you, Ambassador, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, we talked about this before, but I would like to get your immediate reaction following the lifting of sanctions. How do you and the people of Sudan feel about this?
The government of Sudan has welcomed this decision to lift the sanctions on Sudan, which were placed for more than 20 years. And this is a very important development in the bilateral relations between Sudan and the United States of America. It is a product of a constructive dialogue, transparent dialogue between the two countries that lasts for months on the 5 tracks. And it was a result-oriented dialogue, and we welcome this development. And Sudan will continue cooperation with the United States of America to remove the Sudan also from the list of the countries that sponsor terrorism.
Why has Sudan not been lifted from the list of countries that are still sponsoring terrorism?
That is regrettable and inconsistent with the recognition and widely acknowledgement of the Sudan efforts in combating terrorism regionally and internationally. We have a continued cooperation with the United States on combating terrorism. And in the light of this, it was inconsistent to have the Sudan in the list of the countries that sponsor terrorism. This is a little bit a paradox. And we will continue dialogue with the United States to remove Sudan from that list. And with the same spirit of cooperation, we hope that in the coming decision will be to lift Sudan from the countries that sponsor terrorism.
Now, the lifting of sanctions, what does it mean for Sudan from an economic and investment perspective?
You know, Sudan is a very rich country, is endowed with natural and mineral resources. We have a tremendous natural and mineral resources in Sudan in terms of agriculture, mining, and this will help definitely to the improvement of the Sudanese economy, and will help also in diversify the economy of Sudan. And in this regard, I call on all the major South African companies to come to Sudan to invest, because we have potential areas of investment in agriculture, food processing, animal production. You know, we have the Red Sea and we have the Port Sudan on the Red Sea. So this port can link the African landlocked countries, and they can have access to the Red Sea and international markets, Mediterranean markets and European markets through the our seaport in Port Sudan. So Sudan have tremendous potentials, and this would make Sudan one of the most promising countries in Africa that can provide food for the region. And we have a lot of minerals. We have gold, we have iron, we have copper, uranium, just to mention, few to mention. So Sudan will be one of the leading countries in Africa after lifting of these sanctions, because this will contribute to the improvement and of the economy of the Sudan.
Now, last month, Sudan hosted an intelligence and security conference where we heard that the African countries, some of the African countries here on the continent, they will be working together to fight terrorism. How do you feel about this, and why is there so much investing in this project, considering that you're also building an intelligence college?
Yes, last month Sudan hosted the Committee of Intelligence and Security Services in Africa, CISA, and this is an annual gathering bringing together chiefs and heads of security agents in Africa to discuss the issues of common concern to Africa. And you know that Africa has so many challenges in terms of terrorism, and Sudan is keen on coordinating the efforts of the African continent on this. And coming to your question, because you know terrorism is not an individual concern of one country. It is a global concern that requires a coordinated response, and from that comes that there must be sharing of information on terrorism, because this is, as I said, is a global concern and also is a continental concern. So Sudan has a leading role in the region, regionally and internationally, in combating terrorism. For this reason, we need to share information, we need to cooperate together to thwart and to combat these challenges facing the continent.
Deputy Ambassador, thank you so much, and congratulations on the lifting of the sanctions for Sudan.
Thank you very much.
That was Sudan's Deputy Ambassador to South Africa, Ubasid Mohammed. Now, the picture of the day comes from Theo Bland. He says, "Happy Halloween" at Bruno Mars. This is my son, Benson. Look at him, Bruno Mars there. Hashtag big fans. There you go. Little Bruno Mars. Now let's move on to our comment of the day, which comes from Ivan Nichilian. It's called The Total Breakdown out of 100. South Africa, 78.97%. France, 75.88%. Ireland, 72.25%. Hashtag Rugby World Cup 2023. Here we come. 2023. The question is, and that's on a poll that we're asking you, as a country, can we afford to host the World Cup? That's the question that we pose to you in our sports question this morning. So you can also let us know what's on your mind. We'll read those comments a little bit later. Let's now go to the courts. Start off in Cape Town. Triple murder accused Henry van Breda is expected to continue testifying in the High Court in Cape Town today. Proceedings are being broadcast live after the court ruled in favor of media houses yesterday to broadcast it. 22-year-old Henry van Breda says that he became confused and disorientated after witnessing the killing of his family members. Now, he's on trial for the murder of his parents and older brother in January 2015. His sister was seriously injured in the incident. Van Breda also testified that he fell off the stairs of their Desalza home after wrestling with an axe-wielding intruder who he alleges killed his family. Still in court and moving to the Eastern Cape now in Port Elizabeth, the case of the Nigerian pastor Timothy Omotoso resumes in the Port Elizabeth Magistrates Court today. Nigerian pastor Timothy Omotoso is facing charges of human trafficking, a Schedule 6 offense, which is currently awaiting to hear his fate. Now, he has been denied bail. The trial date is expected to be set in Bloemfontein. The Supreme Court of Appeal will hear the appeal of 4 of the 8 former police officers who were each sentenced to 15 years imprisonment for the killing of the Mozambican taxi driver Mido Marcia back in 2013. Marcia was dragged behind a police van on the streets of Davidton on the East Rand. He was later found dead in a holding cell. And here in Johannesburg, in Soweto, a scholar patroller accused of molesting 87 children appears in Protea Magistrates Court today. The case was postponed to November the 1st for further investigation. The 57-year-old scholar patroller accused of allegedly sexually assaulting a large group of learners at a primary school in Soweto abandoned his bail at the Protea Magistrates Court on the 25th of October 2017. Patroller Dennis Babaza told the magistrate, Ronald Zakwe, that he was instructed to abandon the bail application pending the finalization of investigations. The 57-year-old allegedly sexually assaulted 87 girls from a primary school. We will keep you updated on all these developments and all these cases in the court as we continue. But right now, we'll take a short break. But after the break, we will return to give you an update on what is currently happening in Kenya. Stay tuned.
I feel it's a real person.
And it's nutritious and delicious.
It's good. I really like it.
This celebrates being South African. We love our beer, we love our food, we love our music.
For knowing who are going, you must know where you come from.
I'm excited to be part of this year.
For all your travel trends, catch us every Sunday, 12 midday on Channel 404.
Entrepreneurship and taking charge of your own destiny is a mindset, and it's something that should start at a very young age.
I started when I was around about 3 or something, because I have a bunch of paintings in the office. I have a teacher that teaches me and my class how to do business, and he was the one who taught me.
Being an entrepreneur makes you money-wise.
Before everyone spent their money, I would sell the little things I painted, and I'd sell my drawings and stuff like that.
In business, it is important to keep record of all your transactions.
I have a passion and I love making anything, so I chose to make Play-Doh, and I'm passionate about it.
Catch Bupilong every Friday at 17:30.
International observers of the just concluded presidential election rerun in Kenya have called on those who have grievances following the declaration of the incumbent Uhuru Kenyatta as the winner to seek legal redress. Now, their statement comes as the opposition leader Raila Odinga announced that he would use peaceful protest, economic boycotts and convene a people's assembly to push for free and fair elections. Odinga, who boycotted the rerun, termed Kenyatta's 98% victory a sham. He did not, however, say if he will move to court to challenge the results. Sarah Kamani reports.
A day after Uhuru Kenyatta was declared winner of the presidential elections rerun, boycotted by a section of the country, international observers are giving their verdict. The European Union termed the current situation in the country as a dangerous political standoff. Both the African Union and the European Union called for any side that does not agree with the outcome to go to court.
We make a recommendation here that a request, an appeal. If anybody has any problems with regard to this fresh presidential election of the 26th of October, please let's go back to the courts and raise whatever concerns. But otherwise, no other recommendations. The recommendations will appear in that final report.
While the National Super Alliance, the main opposition coalition, boycotted the polls on Tuesday, Odinga described the process as a sham.
If election is allowed to stand, the highest office in the land will be occupied by a person who has usurped power. We in NASA are resolute that this sham election cannot and will not be allowed to stand.
Odinga, who did not say if he would be going to court, called for dialogue through the convening of a people's assembly.
Before engaging in any dialogue, we must also be clear what differences we are sitting down to resolve. The political crisis we are in is about free and fair elections.
According to the law, anyone wishing to challenge the outcome of the polls has until Monday next week to file a petition at the Supreme Court. Sarah Kimani, SABC News, Kenya.
Meanwhile, the Commonwealth Election Observer Mission to Kenya is yet to determine if the elections were free, fair and credible. The head of mission and former president of Zambia, Rupiah Banda, admits that the situation was challenging.
Unfortunately, Kenya is an indicator of the real problems in Africa. That we go back to our laggers, we do our villages, our tribes, and where we come from, and try to bring in the modern concept of democracy and unity and progress together, and it doesn't work. So in Kenya, you have this problem. I would not like to apportion blame on anyone between the two main leaders, namely President Uhuru and President of the other political party, Mr. Odinga, because these problems have been going on. That's why way back they had a terrible experience, although this one was not as bad as that one, but it is there simmering. It can get worse later on. We all have to learn that democracy entails choice of the people, and one leader coming out is against the other. Like football. We who sit in the terraces can see when a handball in the box has taken place, but it may be the referee has not seen it, so he doesn't blow the whistle for a penalty.
Well, there you have it. Some challenging times ahead. Now, for more on this, we joined in studio by our Foreign Desk editor, Sophie Mukwena. Very good morning to you, ma'am. Welcome.
Good morning, Elvis. Thank you.
Now, you were in Kenya. Your observation with the mood currently happening, what's happening after the elections in Kenya?
What I can say is that Kenya is going through a very difficult time where the country is divided. Yes, indeed, some are saying it is not true that the country is divided, but the reality is the country is divided. You have a situation where some people boycotted elections, others went to the polls to vote. And therefore, you're talking about two different situations or scenarios. And that speaks to how people feel in Kenya. Some feel very strong that President Uhuru Kenyatta is right in terms of what he's doing, and in particular Jubilee is on a right course. On the other hand, we have the other group saying they would like to see NASA taking over in terms of taking the country forward and supporting Raila Odinga. Therefore, the country is divided.
President of Zambia, Rupia Banda, former president that is, he's the head of missions there. He says that it was a challenging situation with regards to the elections in Kenya. Take us through that and what does it mean?
Let's go back. Previously, there was an electoral commission that was disbanded because Raila Odinga was not happy or the opposition raised concerns. It was disbanded. We are told that some of the commissioners are still getting salaries or the pension because their term hadn't expired. And there was a decision to set up this new electoral commission. And now again, the opposition is questioning the legitimacy and how the electoral commission has conducted itself, calling for reforms in terms of the electoral commission. In other words, almost saying disband this electoral commission. On the other hand, you have the other group, particularly those who are supporting Jubilee, who are saying, we've done it before, we're not going to do it now. This current or this structure must continue to do its work in line with what's prescribed in the constitution of the country and the laws of the country. Therefore, preparing elections has been a very difficult task. Secondly, you have a situation where this standoff has taken some form of a ethnic division or tribal divisions, where people align themselves according to certain tribes or ethnic groupings. Even though, when you look at the two groups, somewhere, somehow, there's some overlapping of different groupings. But the reality is, at times, it takes the tribalism undertone, which makes things more complicated, because when you bring in issues of divisions based on gender, race, color, creed, or groupings, it gets even more complicated. Therefore, the problem in Kenya, we have to deal with issues of division based on tribalism or ethnicity.
Now, international observers has indicated that those unhappy with the election results and, of course, the declaration of the incumbent Uhuru Kenyatta as the president, they need to seek legal redress. Do you think that'll happen?
I don't know. This time around, people I spoke to with legal background are saying the Electoral Commission this time around did a good job in terms of ensuring that they close all the legal loopholes, and therefore it is going to be very difficult. But you know what? You'll never know. If anyone takes the matter to court, and then we'll see what will transpire. The Supreme Court stands ready to hear any matter that's likely to come before the courts, and we know they've done it before. They did nullify the elections, and we can't rule that out. But I am told, in terms of people we spoke to who are legal fundis, they feel that it is going to be a bit difficult this time around, but never say never.
So what will happen next then? Perhaps a compromise between the President Uhuru Kenyatta and the opposition?
Jubilee has made it clear that there won't be any other elections. Secondly, they are prepared to work towards uniting the country, inclusivity, but it will not be based on a political platform, but rather to ensure that you incorporate all different groups or communities in terms of the running of government. Therefore, I suspect if all goes well for Uhuru Kenyatta, his cabinet will reflect inclusivity, but not political inclusivity, community inclusivity, different tribes or different groupings or different ethnic groups, and to really get a sense of what's likely to happen. Let's take a listen at the Deputy President of Kenya, William Ruto. I spoke to him about this issue of inclusivity and the fact that there should be unity in Kenya, and this is what he had to say.
We are actively, as the people of Kenya, and specifically President Uhuru Kenyatta and those of us in Jubilee, actively working towards uniting this country. Today, the Jubilee Party has elected officials. In the last elections of 8th of August, we have elected officials in 41 of the 47 counties in Kenya. We can today stand on a platform and say we have a national party as opposed to the ethnic parties we inherited 4.5 years ago.
Are you going to reach out to those citizens?
And we are seriously working towards building bridges across communities, across regions, and bringing people together. We do not want to kill competition. We will engage our brothers and sisters in the opposition within the parameters of the Constitution, ensuring that they make input in matters of governance, they keep government in check, ensuring that as we serve the entirety of the Kenyan people, they too help us in that service by making sure that they keep government on its toes.
Well, there you have it. Looking forward to the next election. What will happen next, Sophie?
Well, I think people will try to ensure that there's unity in Kenya. And unfortunately, currently, ordinary people are suffering. A small business in particular, we're told that the country has lost almost 1 trillion shillings, which is a bad sign in terms of economic stability. Secondly, the children, the learners in particular, the future of the country, badly affected. On Monday, when we went out and followed the Minister of Education, we are told that at one point in one area, children were beaten after he visited school, and children are writing exams. And one is asking herself, I'm asking myself that as a parent, how will I feel if my kids are not able to go to school? These are future leaders, and unfortunately, politicians at times don't think. What you do, you transfer to the young ones. This kind of a standoff and children getting beaten during elections, it's bad. It can't happen. They are supposed to be writing exams. This is the future. These are the future leaders, not only of Kenya, the region, the continent, and the world at large. Therefore, I think it's up to political leaders in Kenya to understand that people are suffering and they must do something to stabilize the country. And it's the responsibility of all Africans, not only the Kenyans, the region, the East Africa region, the continent, and the world. And the media also, you know, for being there, did assist, because sometimes when you beam these visuals, you communicate to the entire world about what's happening there, it becomes a deterrent. It is for that reason, much as lives were lost, 6 people we are told, it could have been worse. And I think as people of the world, we must continue to look at what's happening in Kenya.
Sophie, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio. That was our foreign desk editor here in studio, Sophie Mukwena. Now, of course, you can join in on the conversation on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page. What do you think what's currently happening in Kenya? Let's now take a look at newspapers from around the globe. And we're starting off in China. The South China Morning Post reports that a pickup driver killed 8 people in New York on Tuesday, mowing down cyclists and pedestrians before striking a school bus in the city's first deadly attack, blamed on terror since September 11, 2001. Let's move now to New York. The Big Apple, the Financial Times, says that Samsung Electronics has shaken up its executive team after the August sentencing of its de facto leader in a corruption scandal, replacing all three of its co-chief executives in an attempt to shore up management after a series of setbacks for the founding Lee family. And finally, in Israel, the Jerusalem Post reports that Israeli defense forces on Monday blew up a Hamas-attacked tunnel still under construction that had entered Israeli territory. Now, those are your newspapers from around the globe. We'll take a short break, and we'll be right back after that with our focus this morning on Africa. And this time, we will take a look at our neighbors, Mozambique.
Sports Live, Saturday and Sundays at 8:30 p.m.
Thandi, what did you make of the social media reaction to the news of the death of Magaqa?
People are trying to grapple with the reasons why this is happening. I don't think that's being explained nearly enough.
Professor?
KZN has got a history of this factionalism.
Why are police not getting to the bottom of the scourge?
It's a national disaster that we still are dealing with political killings.
Professor Daniels, just who do you think is behind these killings then? Let me put you on the spot there.
The problems in this country started when the Scorpions were disbanded. And is that what we're going to be seeing now? Deaths, smear campaigns and stuff like that. It's got to stop.
Stay tuned to Media Monitor and catch on analysts unpacking top stories every Sunday from 9 a.m.
Our focus still on Africa this morning and our neighbors. Just when the ancient Mozambique Liberation Front, or Frelimo, the Mozambican National Resistance Renamo, their quarrel was showing some signs of being resolved, a new armed group has popped up from nowhere this month to launch several armed and deadly attacks in the north of the country. I beg your pardon. Locals call these raiders Al-Shabaab. Clashes were reported by independent sources during the night of 22nd of October at a village called Colombe. It's about 16 kilometers south of an installation of Texas-based Anadarko Petroleum Corporation, which is exploring for oil and natural gas there. Now, it's believed to be the first Islamist attacks in Mozambique and, of course, shock and bewilderment in the country and the region. Now, SABC spoke to Africa specialist and producer of Spotlight on Channel Africa, Issa Como.
There's a group, an Islamist group that call themselves Al-Shabaab, and the fighters do have contacts with Al-Shabaab because as it is, the attack which took place 2 weeks ago, it was, I think, the third attack. The first attack took place on somewhere on the 5th of October. Yeah, and people say that those people talk in Swahili, which is a language that's spoken there, and then they're also speaking Somali. Sure. Now, those guys, they do have some connections with Al-Shabaab, as they claim.
How serious is this that Al-Shabaab, that we usually associate with East Africa, is moving this far south?
Well, Al-Shabaab has had many contacts in Eastern and Southern Africa. Well, you should know that Al-Shabaab basically is an offshoot of the Salafis. I'm not saying that it's a Salafist group, but it's an offshoot. They all are Al-Shabaab, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. Now, you find that within Al-Shabaab, there have been fighters who were recruited or who joined Al-Shabaab, who originate from Kenya, who also originated from Burundi, some originated from Uganda, some originated from Tanzania, Zambia, some originated from northern Mozambique, some originated from Malawi, and a few from South Africa.
So you're worried about operations here in South Africa?
Well, Al-Shabaab is all over. That's why I said it's in southern, central, and eastern Africa. Yeah, they've got fighters. They had fighters in Mozambique. And again, you should imagine that Al-Shabaab is not just a matter of having fighters, it's a network. And one of the biggest networks which goes beyond having fighters is the economic network. So Al-Shabaab is self-sufficient in funding, and they have their network all over. Now, one of the biggest economic center is South Africa. So a lot of money that gets out of South Africa monthly going to Somalia to fund Al-Shabaab activity. I mean, we had the so-called White Widow who was here. Yeah, she was an Al-Shabaab operative, and she was even had a house here. Yeah.
So this would concern many people. We've had no attacks. Is that danger far off, or is it coming closer, given that we're seeing attacks killing 16 people in Mozambique?
Well, I don't know about attacks, but I mean to say that Al-Shabaab, when they operate, they actually have their areas. They've got their operational areas, and their operational areas are areas where they've got a majority or they've got a very strong Islamic sort of setup. Yeah, South Africa is a place where they've got a minority of Islamic setup. Yeah, so when they come to attack, I don't think they would actually do that. But it's more important to them as an economic base and also as a medical base for recuperation. Many Al-Shabaab fighters and commanders, they're in South Africa. They come to South Africa, they get new identities, and they've been treated in hospitals without people knowing. In fact, they're here. Let me not just say that. I mean, if you go to the underground and put on your clothes, you'll hear a lot of things. Not that I'm there, but I mean to say just hear things.
Not good news for South Africa. But in terms of Mozambique, so we've already had a lot of ructions politically, Renamo, Frelimo. So this is a whole new group. What does it mean for security in Mozambique, and how has government responded thus far?
Well, I don't know if it's a new thing. It's not even a new occurrence. I mean to say that they've got a very big UNHCR refugee camp in northern Mozambique, in Nampula. Now, that camp of Nampula, over 3/4 of the people there are Al-Shabaab operatives.
So these reports that this is the first Islamist attack are not true.
It's an attack.
This is a bubbling.
No, it's an attack. We'll come to that attack. But let's talk about the presence first. The presence of Al-Shabaab in Mozambique has been known for a very long time, for over 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Yeah? And Nampula camp is actually operates housing, over half of the people there, they've got Al-Shabaab connections. They're not the Al-Shabaab people. They've got Al-Shabaab connections. They come from southern Somalia. They've got a presence in Malawi. In fact, they've got very big businesses in Malawi. And they've been having those businesses for the last, I think, 10 years. Yeah, they've got businesses again in Lubumbashi. That's one of their major.
Is this the first major attack?
So that's an attack, yeah. Now, when it comes to attack, you find that northern Mozambique is predominantly, there's a majority of Muslims. And now there are issues in developmental issues. Yeah, and you find that the areas where the attack took place, it comes from a province that has got one of the biggest gas reserves on the African continent. So now you find that they're actually making a presence. But before Al-Shabaab or any Salafist group, any sort of group takes over, the first thing that they do, they take over the mosques through the clergies. You know, the Islam which has been practiced in East Africa and also in Somalia, right up to Egypt, is the Qadiriya Islam. The Al-Shabaabs are the Salafiyya or Wahhabiyya Islam. But no, the thing that is taking place due to financing from Saudi Arabia, these people are actually coming there, getting in preachers, and they're taking over the mosque, and the people are starting with the Salafiyya sort of sermons. And after that, It's when they've actually established themselves, that's when the attacks take place. So basically, people should have anticipated it with the radicalization of the form of Islam that's taken place.
So it doesn't bode well for security in Mozambique. Would you say that the news we've received today, that the head of intelligence and the army chief of staff fired is linked?
Yeah, it deals with that directly. I mean, so the only way that you can fight against a group like Al-Shabaab is through intelligence. And if the guys could do what they did and attack police stations, it shows that the national intelligence...
So there's signs of major incompetency.
No, the national intelligence is incompetent. They not have their ear on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is just that. I mean, to say you've got to have your ear on the ground. As it is in Tanzania. Tanzania, they've got their fingers on the ground and they've got their ears on the ground. In fact, in Tanzania, all Salafist mosques have been infiltrated by the security services. Even the radical universities, which have got Salafist funding, they've got boys who go there as students, but they actually belong to the intelligence thing. But that thing there, I think it was not happening in Mozambique.
That was Issa Como with an update what's happening. Now neighbors next door, Mozambique, Al-Shabaab. Well, we'll take a short break right now. It's time for the weather forecast with Azi.
Thanks very much and warm welcome. Well, let's take a look at your weather details. We'll start off with your satellite image where we're still seeing some moisture coming in from the tropical regions sitting over the interior of South Africa, mostly over the southern half. This is where we are expecting partly cloudy skies with 30% chance of thunder showers over the western parts, Namibia, Angola, 60 over the coastal regions of Angola, but going to South Africa, just 30% chance of thunder showers in the southern parts, partly cloudy skies over the southern half, but clear over the interior of SADC and the northern parts of South Africa, over Mozambique, over the eastern parts going to the northern parts. We are expecting 30% chance of thunder showers going to the central interior, but very isolated over the central interior. Moving towards the western parts again for tomorrow, 60% chance of thunder showers in Angola. Moving to South Africa and Namibia, isolated thunder showers, and over the southern half. The northern parts will remain clear again in most parts of SADC. Today we do have a warning of high fire danger in the interior of Northern Cape. Please do take note of that. Do not cause any unnecessary fires. A maximum of 38 in Uppington and partly cloudy skies. Rainy weather can be expected over the western parts going to the southern parts and the interior of Eastern Cape, with a maximum of 34 in Komani, Bloemfontein sitting at 32 and 27 for Polokwane, with sunny skies. Pretoria, a maximum of 33. Over Namibia, we're still expecting partly cloudy skies and isolated thunder showers. In Botswana, partly cloudy to mostly sunny. Maung at a maximum of 34, 32 for Victoria Falls. Harare at a maximum of 28. And along the coastal regions of Mozambique, mostly towards the northern parts, we are expecting 30% chance of thunder showers. Maputo will be sunny with a maximum of 28. In Madagascar, very isolated thunder showers expected over the interior and over the islands. 30% chance of thunder showers in Victoria, mostly sunny skies in Port Louis and going to Moroni, a maximum of 30 with partly cloudy skies. Very isolated thunder showers expected over the interior of DRC. Going to the eastern parts, we're seeing Nairobi at a maximum of 25, partly cloudy skies. Juba at 34 and thunder showers expected. Bangui at 31. Libreville and Luanda up to 60% chance of thunder showers for today and tomorrow. Over the northern parts, still clear over most parts of the Sahara, but along the coastal regions, Tunisia, going to Libya and Egypt, 30% chance of thunder showers can be expected to showers. Clear over the interior, going to the southern parts, 30% chance of showers expected for today and tomorrow. And again, clear over the Sahara, along the coastal regions, 30% chance of showers. A maximum of 20 in Jerusalem, 27 for Riyadh, if you will be Makkah, maximum of 36 and 39 for Khartoum. Addis Ababa, 30% chance of showers. Agadez sitting at 35 degrees and 26 for Tripoli, mostly sunny skies. Going to Nigeria, we are expecting a maximum of 30. Moving to the interior, temperatures are much hotter. Agadez at 35, 23 for Algiers. Bamako at a maximum of 38 and 32 in Dakar, Senegal. Marrakech at 29 and 30 in Abidjan with 30% chance of showers. That is all. Now Yando.
Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa is a South African politician, a skilled negotiator, businessman, activist, and former trade union leader. He was a visiting professor of law at Stanford University in the United States in October 1991. When Nelson Mandela was released from prison, Ramaphosa was chairperson of the National Reception Committee, former Secretary General of the African National Congress in 1991. Cyril was head of the negotiation team of the ANC in negotiating the end of apartheid with the National Party government. Elected the chairperson of Parliament's Constitutional Assembly in 1994 and played a central role in the government of national unity. He is the current deputy president under President Jacob Zuma since 2014.
I guess as deputy president of the ANC, I would have been aware. Let us move forward to build a credible and honest, patriotic leadership of the African National Congress. Let us move ahead to build a renewed ANC, a united ANC, an ANC that is united from top to bottom, bottom upwards. That is the type of ANC that our people want.
Siyavuma. We are your eyes in all major events around the world.
A wonder not seen in the United States in almost 100 years.
It looks like the sky of a different world. You see the stars out during the day. You see a sunset 360 degrees all around you.
Before you leave, make sure that Rob Byrne is taking you through traffic alert all around South Africa.
All we can do is stick to what we do and focus on our own job and not focus on them.
The Boks will also don the red jersey in this match to mark the 25th anniversary of rugby unity in South Africa.
An update on all major currency to guide you. A story of women in jail told in pictures by Fatima Mir through art that will blow your mind. Set the agenda for the day with Morning Live.
With the stories of abuse from the other 8, but they haven't been ready to pursue any angles. They've offered their support, they've offered the comfort to the 8s, and it's been an amazing journey.
It feels like your heart actually literally sunk in your shoes.
It wasn't a long encounter. I think at the time I froze.
The way the criminal justice system deals with sexual violence is problematic. And I don't know, unless there's a fundamental change in many things, the way prosecutors deal with the victim in the matter.
For all investigative insights, stay tuned to Special Assignment every Saturday at 17:30.
Africans are increasingly using digital platforms for life, work and play.
Information is key for us. We live in an information age. We live in the digital age.
I'm mostly on WhatsApp because not all my friends have iPhones, so they don't have FaceTime.
On Network, we tell you about Africa's technology and social media landscape.
And some here are using the internet to raise political concerns.
Some of the exposés on political issues come from what we call your diasporic online media.
Africans are also using technology to create. For African technology and social media news, join me, Phumelele Zondi, on Network every Sunday at 9 p.m.
Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the second hour here in the newsroom. I'm Elvis Preslin. We'll be with you until 12, and today we focus on SASSA, the Social Security Agency, and the South African Post Office. Well, of course, they will return to the negotiating table after significant pressure from MPs to come to an agreement over the distribution of social grants, Kendall.
Absolutely, and we want to find out from you, with all of this going on, the saga going on, what do you think should be happening? We've got a question for you. What needs to be done to resolve the social grants payment standoff?
Well, McRob says, fire Batabile, SASSA fierce, Damini.
Dipanzu says, Batabile thinks we're at her house and forgetting that she's employed.
Those are some of your comments with regards to the question, but we're also focusing on the triple murder accused Henry van Breda. He is this morning in the Cape Town High Court. He's accused of killing his parents as well as his brother with an axe.
Wow. Wow. The Zelda estate near Stellenbosch, January 2015, when the crime was committed. And we want to find out from you, do you have any interest in the Henry van Breda axe murder case?
Well, so far 109 votes in, and I tell you, only 64% are saying yes, 36% are saying no, they're not interested.
But the overwhelming majority absolutely wanted to know how it's going to pan out.
Siafana says, yes, I want to see the end of the case.
There you go. We also have Mzondile say, yes, I'm interested. This boy must get a harsh sentence to send a message to others. Black, poor people were suspected in this matter and they were innocent.
Keep them coming, but there's also another bigger question. Can we afford, do we have the money to host a Rugby World Cup? That's the question we posed to you this morning.
Yeah, just yesterday we all found out that World Rugby says yes, South Africa is the preferred candidate to host 2023. A vote is going to be had on the 15th to confirm and maybe ratify. But we want to find out from you, can we afford it? Can we afford this World Cup? 2.9 billion rand were put up as a guarantee. 2.9 billion rand before we even have a match played. Derek Howells says no. South Africa needs to drastically get its house in order. The very people Madiba and OR Tambo fought and died for are living and dying in squalor. They would be so ashamed and are probably turning in their graves by the unethical way 100 years of struggle has panned out. Shame.
Zwandile says, oh, why not? We did it successfully before and our country became so united as a nation. So yes, we can. Well, we hosted in 95, very successful. 2010 came. We hosted Soccer World Cup. Very successful. Why not this one? But do we have the moolah, the cash, Himalaya?
Oh, yes.
That's the question. But right now, let's get down to business and take a look at your news headlines. The cross-examination of triple murder accused Henry van Breda will continue this morning after the 22-year-old took the stand in his murder trial for the first time yesterday. Parliament has instructed the Social Development Minister Batabile Dlamini and the Minister of Telecommunications Siyabonga Cwele to work out a deal for social grant payments by the Post Office. And authorities in the US are treating an incident in Lower Manhattan where a truck plowed into people on a bike path as an act of terror. Those are your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate. What's happening on the sports?
Squire, quite a lot. Thank you very much. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
Madiba. Rocky. Madiba. United! Simply outstanding! Brilliant football and his eye-catching step!
Super Sports United used their African campaign experience to devastating effect, blowing hitherto undefeated Golden Arrows away with a 3-0 victory.
Rotti inside. Oh, it's an absolute screamer again.
The much-anticipated return match between Roma and Chelsea becomes a hopelessly one-sided affair as the Italian side nets 3 times with no answer from Antonio Conte's men.
Roma 3, Chelsea 0. Roma leapfrogging Chelsea at the top of the table on a very, very bad night for the West London side.
And South Africa's Olympic gold medalist and world record holder Wade van Niekerk will miss out on next year's Commonwealth Games after suffering a serious knee injury in a celebrity touch rugby match. I'll have all this in more detail in about 40 minutes' time. Do stay with Elvis as he's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. The cross-examination of triple murder accused Henry van Breda will continue in the Cape Town High Court this morning. The 22-year-old van Breda took to the stand in his murder trial for the first time yesterday. Now, he is accused of killing his parents and older brother with an axe at the De Zalze estate near Stellenbosch in January 2015. He has denied that he was responsible for the murders. According to his evidence, van Breda was too fearful to help his family after they were attacked. Van Breda said his police statement following the incident was not recorded verbatim and that there were a number of discrepancies compared to his plea explanation. Alluded to the unlikelihood of intruders breaching their estate security, committing a multiple murder and fleeing undetected. The case continue, and we will perhaps cross a little bit later live when we do get the feed. A scholar patroller accused of sexually assaulting 87 learners at a primary school in Soweto is expected to appear in the court today. 54-year-old man has been charged with 3 counts of rape and 5 of sexual assault. Learners at the primary school had claimed that he sexually violated them. The school principal and senior management have since been suspended. In the wake of the sexual assault allegations, the Gauteng Premier David Makura appointed a special cabinet committee to ascertain the level of sexual violence as well as to put measures in place to strengthen the safety of learners in schools. Murder accused Christopher Panayoto will have to wait till tomorrow to know his fate. Final arguments in the case was concluded in the High Court in Port Elizabeth yesterday. Panayoto is accused of orchestrating the abduction and murder of his wife Jade in April 2015, along with his co-accused Senatembe Nemembe and Zolani Sebeko.
Panayoto's defense argued in closing that the state used underhanded tactics, including assaulting, while interviewing its former state witness and alleged middleman Lutando Sioni. He was also shown graphic images of Jade Panayoto's body. Sioni said in an affidavit he was intimidated by Swanepoel and told to confess that Panayoto orchestrated the murder of his wife. Panayoto's defense also continued to cast doubt on the undercover video implicating him. Defense attorney Peter Doberman, defending co-accused Senatembe Nemembe and Zolani Sebeko, told the court that the state's evidence against his clients was all circumstantial and not linking them directly to the crime. Judgment will be handed down on Thursday. Jade Lee-Paulser, SABC News, Port Elizabeth.
A police task team in KwaZulu-Natal has taken over the investigation of a spate of recent killings in the province believed to be linked to taxi violence. In the last 2 weeks, 18 people have died. In the latest incident, the deputy chairperson of the Klip River Taxi Association was ambushed and killed in Ladysmith in the Midlands yesterday. Police say occupants of the 2 vehicles opened fire on a bakkie transporting the deputy chair, his daughter, 2 bodyguards and his driver. The bakkie lost control and collided head-on with an oncoming minibus taxi. The taxi was transporting teachers. 5 were killed while 6 succumbed to injuries in hospital. A manhunt is underway for the armed group linked to the deaths. Social Security Agency SASSA and the South African Post Office SAPO will return to the negotiating table today after significant pressure from MPs to come to an agreement over the distribution of social grants. The chair of Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts, Temba Gori, has given the two parties until 6 o'clock tonight to submit a report. Officials from SASSA and SAPO met overnight in order to solve the deadlock over the payment of these social grants. Both parties are expected to report back to Parliament this evening about the progress they have made. SASSA is under instruction from the Constitutional Court to find a new service provider by April next year. But Abilia Dlamini's department has been accused of dragging its feet. The Post Office, meanwhile, disputes claims that it's not good for the job. MPs across party lines expressed frustration. The Minister, Dlamini, was quizzed on her reasons for rejecting the Post Office. She says she would work with SAPO but insisted that she won't be bullied by them. Meanwhile, the IFP has written to the Speaker requesting an investigation into the process of finding a new service provider. And that's the reason we ask you this question this morning in relation to the standoff between the South African Post Office as well as SASSA. How can it be resolved? And you are tweeting us currently as we speak. We're asking you that question. What needs to be done to resolve the social grant payment standoff? You are tweeting us on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on the Facebook page. Rodrigue says, the problem, the Minister is doing all she can to avoid SAPO. Maybe if she get fired, but you know she won't, says Rodrigue. Vincent Stewart says, get rid of SASSA, Minister. It's so plainly obvious she has hidden yet obvious agenda. Mzwandile says, but Abilia must be fired. Simple as that. Those are your comments. You can keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. Now, as the debate over the nuclear energy continues, Energy Minister David Mashlobo has called for a partnership between government and the private sector. Now, this can help offset some of the expensive costs associated with possible energy plans, says some. The minister was speaking earlier to SABC News.
The question is not about affordability, but the question is to make responsible decisions. When it comes to procurement, I know the preoccupation is about who's going to take the tender. My preoccupation is to supply energy at an affordable cost, but more importantly, follow the laws when you come to a procurement process. And those processes must be transparent, must be within our laws as a country.
In news abroad, U.S. authorities are treating the attack in New York as an act of terror. A man in a rented truck ran down pedestrians and cyclists, killing 8 people and injuring at least 12 others.
The mayor of New York confirmed this was an act of terror.
It's a very painful day in our city. Horrible tragedy on the west side. Let me be clear that based on the information we have at this moment, this was an act of terror and a particularly cowardly act of terror.
Police say the suspect is 29 years old but would not confirm his identity despite local media sharing his name. The truck used in the attack was a rental, while the suspect is reported to have had a paintball and a pellet gun in his possession when he was shot in the leg by police.
There's no evidence to suggest a wider plot or a wider scheme, but the actions of one individual who meant to cause pain and harm and probably death and the resulting terror. And that was the purpose.
Trump tweeted that this looked like another attack by a very sick and deranged person. Eyewitness accounts reveal that the suspect shouted Allahu Akbar, or God is great, when he exited the vehicle.
When he exited the vehicle, and if you just look at the MO of the attack, that's consistent with what's been going on. So that, along with the statement, has enabled us to label this a terrorist event.
Indicating that locals can expect a strong police presence across the city in the aftermath of this attack. The suspect is being treated in hospital, but is expected to make a full recovery. Any future court appearances, of course, will be contingent on that. Sherman Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.
International organization UNICEF says a staggering number of children, some as young as 12 months old, are experiencing violence, often by those entrusted to take care of them. Now, to end violence against children, UNICEF is calling for governments to take urgent action. Now, for more on this, we are joined by Cornelius Williams. He's the head of child protection at UNICEF. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Good morning.
Now, first and foremostly, I would like to check with you, why do you think is there so much violence against children worldwide?
What we have found out actually is that, first of all, we're happy that people are getting to recognize the level of violence, which is staggering. Millions of children are affected by it. And this level of violence is due to a societal acceptance that violence is normal, and a lack of understanding there are alternatives to it.
So it's a new normal that people are accepting?
It's a new normal. It's been there all the time. It's been there all the time, but we didn't have the data previously to expose this violence. That's why we call the report a familiar face. It was there, but people didn't see it. Now we have the data to demonstrate it.
What does the data suggest?
So the data suggests actually that 3/4 of the world's children, 2 to 4 years old, around 300 million, experience some form of physical aggression or physical punishment of caregivers at home. As we said before, babies as young as 2 are being slapped, right? We also know that actually 6 in 10 one-year-olds in 30 countries actually are subjected to violent discipline as well. And worldwide, actually, 1 in 4 children age 5 are living with a mother who has also had intimate partner violence. And this issue of intimate partner violence actually affects the child because it's domestic violence, right? And then there's the issue of sexual violence as well. Around 15 million adolescent girls, 15 to 19, have experienced forced sexual intercourse or forced sexual acts in their lifetime. The forced sexual act of 15 million girls is forced, right? Only 1% of girls who have experienced sexual violence have come forward for care. So most of these 15 million girls actually don't come forward for care. Okay, they don't visit the hospital, they don't have, if it's an HIV/AIDS infected country with high prevalence, they don't have the prophylactics, okay, to prevent the infection or to prevent the pregnancy. We have 28 countries where it's shown actually that 90% of the girls who've experienced forced sex said the perpetrators were known to them. These are not people that's
unknown or strangers.
Yes, they're not strangers. They're people in their household, they're partners they were going out with. That's why we're so concerned about intimate partner violence. One of the things we want to say actually in this report and we want to bring out is globally, every 7 minutes, an adolescent is killed by an act of violence. And we have seen that actually in Latin America, in some of these countries, the level of violence against adolescents have gone up.
Now, you are calling on governments to take urgent action to end this violence against children. What are some of the proposals that you put forth?
So one of the proposals actually is legislative action, right? We have to ensure that we ban corporal punishment in schools, okay? We have to ensure that we ban corporal punishment and physical punishment in homes, so in the homes and schools. And we have to ensure that we help parents to know there is an alternative in terms of what we call positive discipline, right? We also have to ensure actually that we work with adults to change the behavior. We have to transform society. We have to make society less violent. If this generation of children know that they can live in a violence-free society and that they can be the developmental outcomes that we want for these children, we can get without having to resort to physical violence to discipline them, then we will be able to transform the society. We also have to ensure actually that we're focusing on policy and legislation that can ensure that actually the court, if there's a perpetrator, he's brought to justice.
Now, in South Africa, the South African High Court made a ruling that parents who smack their children will, of course, no longer be able to do so and plead that special defense in court if criminally charged. What do you make of this? And is this perhaps the way to start here in South Africa to curb the violence against children?
So one of the things we've looked at South Africa as one of the leading countries. It's banned corporal punishment in school. It's had this judiciary, this judiciary action, right, about corporal punishment in the home. What needs to happen is the education of the parents. We shouldn't only pass a law, we need to help these parents, okay? We in UNICEF, we don't say there's a bad parent and a good parent. We have to help these parents. So there are a lot of positive discipline. Now, in South Africa, there was a study that shows that parenting education, that is educating parents, can bring down violence in the home by over 40%.
How do you do that, educating parents? Because some are suggesting that they don't have any alternatives.
Right. So this is by educating parents. Maybe we shouldn't use the word like it's a top-down education, okay? It's getting parents together in groups and talking to them and getting them to share experiences and also to introduce new experiences that they themselves in an experiential way can understand. The fact that actually you can say, I'm withdrawing things like, okay, I'm going to cut down on your allowance. I'm going to take away your phone. I'm going to, and try to rationalize and explain with the children, right, why they should not go through this. We have seen other countries who have gone through this trajectory, right? Every country goes through it. There is an uproar once this law is passed. There is an uproar. Decades later, they said, oh my God, right? It's possible to bring up my child without any violent discipline.
Which countries is that principle working? Where?
One of the countries that stand out is Sweden. When this was introduced in Sweden in the 70s, there was uproar, right? Eventually, tell me, have you seen the Swedish children running around ill-disciplined?
No.
Is the developmental outcome for Swedish children right?
So it's a model that can be utilized and that can be duplicated in many other countries.
In many other countries. And I can tell you, okay, the information and the knowledge is here in South Africa.
What do you say to those parents who says, you know, our children are petty bourgeoisie, they're belligerent, we can't discipline them? And even teachers for that matter, because they're using the rod instead of the love that they're supposed to give to these kids.
We have enough scientific evidence to show that actually that's not the case, right? We have enough scientific evidence to show that you can use positive discipline in a practical way. And we have seen actually the development, what we want, why I call it the developmental outcome. What do we want? Good citizens of South Africa, right? You can have a societal transformation, okay, without these children not applying violent discipline. Remember, a child who has suffered from violent abuse is most likely to be abusive themselves.
In the end, Mr. William, how do we change this and how can people get assistance if they need assistance?
So one of the things we're talking about, first let's start with the early childhood development programs that are in South Africa. Through these early childhood development programs, there is enough information on parenting and how to do good parenting. Then we move to the schools where we expect that we should have this information. Then we're calling on the religious leaders and the churches to ensure that they have good parenting programs. They are the voices who can be able to carry this out. Then finally we're calling on government, and we're calling on this particular program, the media, to show that actually we can have good parenting program and it's possible. And you have to have role models in South Africa who can come forward. And I read about one of them and that can say, I can discipline my child without using violence.
I thank you so much, sir, for coming in and joining us here in the studio. That sounds very uplifting.
Yes.
That was Cornelius William, a head of child of protection at UNICEF. Well, that is your news for now. We'll take a short break, and after that, when we do return, we'll give you more.
Well, today we discuss the general practitioner or GP.
So the quality of the doctors coming through our medical schools is excellent.
Your GP is your family doctor. Your GP is your first point of care.
Who determines how much a consultation fee should be?
We set up networks of general practitioners, and one of the conditions of the network was to agree to charge a certain fee.
Specialists are specialists. We can't take away their role. We can't take away what they do for each patient in their disease entity.
Our specialist colleagues as well don't appreciate patients coming straight off the street, as it were, to see them. They're highly trained.
For health tips that will help you to adopt healthy living, catch Health Talk every Saturday from 9 to 10.
Parliament's Public Enterprises Committee inquiring into Eskom's corporate governance will be briefed today on the purchase of the Optimum coal mine. Now, yesterday we heard about Trillion. Let's go there live.
In light of the two, in whose account would the 586 million have had to be paid to?
So we had no knowledge of the 586 million rand. We were not in control, certainly, of Tegeta. However, as mentioned, post the close of the deal, Optimum coal mine remained in business rescue from April until the 31st of August 2016. As a result, we were certainly in control of that legal entity, and Optimum coal mine did not receive the 586 million rand. Subsequent to the close of the transaction, Optimum coal mine entered into a sale agreement with Tegeta for the supply of coal to the Arnott colliery. But at the time of the prepayment, certainly that payment was not made to Optimum coal mine. And in fact, on the date that the payment was made, if the public protector's numbers are correct, the payment was made to Tegeta, which was not the shareholder of the mine at the time either. It merely had a right to acquire the mine.
In your view, as the business rescue practitioner of Optimum coal mine, where should the 586 million should have been deposited? Into whose account should that money have been deposited?
I think, first of all, the rationale for the money would need to be interrogated in the first place. Optimum coal mine was in business rescue, so clearly was financially distressed. We had, however, negotiated better payment terms on the Hendrina contract. This coal supply agreement was between Tegeta and between Eskom. It was not between Optimum and Tegeta. It was, of course, back-to-back, subsequent to the prepayment, in terms of an agreement between Optimum and Tegeta. So in terms of a very Optimum coal mine point of view, we never supplied the coal to Eskom. We supplied the coal to Tegeta on 30-day payment terms. So the prepayment was a transaction between Tegeta and between Eskom. And the issue that we had, or we took with regards to the various interviews, was that the rationale given for the prepayment was twofold. First of all, that the company was in business rescue. As I've mentioned, we didn't get that. Second of all, that equipment was required in order to mobilize and increase production. We were currently in control of that mine, and whilst there was a modest amount that was required in order to restart a second dragline, it certainly wasn't anywhere near the quantum of 586 million rand. I hope that's answered your question.
You're probably not aware, but I am aware that there was a 1.6 billion guarantee from Eskom, which assisted in the facilitation of the payment of the purchase price. Are you aware of that amount of money?
Just from the press.
So in terms of the payment of this particular transaction, you as business rescue practitioners, and I've had a look at the contract relating to this purchase of shares and rights, you are one of the parties to this agreement. From your explanation, it would appear that you were in the dark as to the source of funding for this transaction. Is that correct?
The ultimate source is incorrect. When we concluded the transactions, one of the conditions precedent was that the purchaser demonstrate to us that they had the financial ability to conclude this transaction. We were effectively given a letter of comfort from their bankers that they did have the funds available in order to conclude this transaction. So we relied on that letter in terms of concluding a transaction. The ultimate source of the funds that discharged the purchase price only became known to us and effectively predicated this Section 34 declaration.
Clearly, and this is very apparent from your statement to the DPCI, and assume that it's a package that informs your suspicion around the activities on the 11th of September. That there is a meeting between yourself and Mr. Owa in the morning. In the afternoon around 3, you report back to him that the banks whom you had approached have considered his request unfavorably. And midnight on the same evening, there is a board tender committee meeting, which you had at the time no knowledge of. Not surprising, because you are not a board member of Eskom. At night on the 11th, the BTC approves this 586 million rands. Now, those are the facts. What I'm interested in pursuing with you is the following. Mr. Owa was not a board member at Eskom. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
The purchasers were not and still are not directors or board members of the Eskom board.
As far as I understand, that's correct.
That the meeting gets to be convened by whoever, and surely that meeting must have been convened by members of the board or relevant members of the board tender committee. And that board committee then deals with the prepayment, which later forms part of paying the purchase price. If I were to put it to you then, and I would like your comment on this hypothesis, that Mr. Owa must have control over the people that convened that board tender committee that evening of the 11th of April 2016. What will be your response to that?
I think that the timing and the quantum certainly look suspicious, but the hypothesis is something I think above my pay grade in terms of whether they have control. We certainly raised the issue. It certainly doesn't look fantastic. I think if you look at it in the context of the Public Protector's report, particularly the communication between Mrs. Raghavan and Mr. Molefe at that point in time, there is certainly something that requires further investigation.
Maybe the word hypothesis scares you. Maybe let's use common sense. There must have been a relationship which you and I seated here now and here cannot explain. But this relationship from the purchasers, because surely if they are to get 586 million from Eskom, you see, if the banks that you had approached were to give Mr. Owa the 600 million, it would have been because you were approached, you went to the bank, and the banks would have agreed to loan the 600 million. Is that correct?
Certainly that was the request that was made of me.
Now, you and I seated here might not know the role players, but it would appear that somebody must have initiated this special odd meeting on the same day, that evening, for that meeting to take place.
I would imagine that meetings like that do require notice, and certainly the commendable work ethic to meet in the evening. but I have no knowledge around what required timeframes, notices Eskom's internal meetings have. It may have been called earlier, or I have no knowledge of that.
But we know, I know, let me not say we know, let me say I know that before your meeting and your response to Mr. Owa on the 11th of April 2016, there was no special board tender committee convened. Not certainly to look at the prepayment of the amount you've requested, or you've stated in a statement. So that you can accept from me. So I'm saying, if the 586 million paid the purchase price, those in need of the 586 million would have...
Well, that is Eskom under review there, of course. But right now, we promised earlier, the cross-examination of the triple murder accused Henry van Breda will continue in the Cape Town High Court this morning. The 22-year-old took the stand in his murder trial yesterday for the first time. He's now on the stand. Let's go there live.
I probably wouldn't have just said, please help, and left it there.
So you telling this court that you walking outside of your house, clothed only in your sleep shorts?
Sleeping shorts and socks, yes.
Socks. You have wounds on your body.
Correct.
You have blood spatter at least on your shorts, your sleeping shorts.
Correct.
You are on the phone and you ask this woman, please get help, or please help, something to that effect.
Correct.
And she does nothing.
That would assume, it appears that she did nothing, yes.
If the person you're referring to should stated the statement in the police document jogged your memory, given that all the state witnesses who weren't called was made available to the defense, would you not have expected that if she corroborated your version that the defense would call her? The witness that the accused referred to, Mr. van Breda referred to, jogged his memory because of the statement in the police docket, whom he remembers to be employed somewhere on the estate as a domestic worker. And had she corroborated your version of asking her for help, would that not be an important witness to be called? She was made available to the defense.
I suppose so.
My client is in charge of which witness are being called, not I am. I make those decisions. It's an unfair statement.
That's correct. Ms. Gellerberg, all you can put to the witness that there is a statement, there's a statement from this witness, and that witness was not called. We can't take it further. I think that objection is probably.
As good, please. I will leave it at that. Now, moving a bit forward, Mr. van Breda, to early hours of the morning of 27th of January 2015. What was your first indication that something was wrong or something out of the ordinary was taking place in your house?
The sounds I heard from the bathroom.
Do you have any indication as to around what time this might have taken place?
I don't.
I didn't find in your evidence at all, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that you in actual fact did fall asleep after putting in your earphones and listening to music, and before you got up to go to the bathroom. Did you in actual fact fall asleep or not?
No, I didn't fall asleep.
regards to your family, Mr. Van der Gaar, just something that I forgot to ask you earlier before we got to the 27th of January. James Reed John testified and said that he found your father to be a more dominant and controlling figure in the family. Do you agree with that or not?
I suppose he was a rather dominant figure. Yes, I'm not surprised by James's assessment of him. My dad had a lot of fun teasing James with the way that he gave massive amounts of deference to my dad, and so on. So I'm not surprised that that's James's opinion of.
What is your opinion of your dad? Do you agree with James?
Somewhat. Yes.
Why do you agree with him?
My father was a very strong man. He was always in charge of his own companies, etc., and he was always the boss. So dominant would be an accurate word, I guess, but whether that is as relevant to the family scenario is what I'm doubting, disagreeing with.
Okay, you've now commented on the dominant part. What about the fact that James is of the view that your father was controlling type of person?
I think that's, again, just based on his experience with Marley at the time. I mean, this is Marley's first serious boyfriend, so naturally, Dad was very protective over her. So,
you see, James also testified that there were arguments in the family because of his actions in controlling the family.
yes, as I think in that goes in most families, at that particular time it was more centered on Marley. She was busy growing up and I guess starting to rebel, but nothing out of the ordinary for a regular family, I would say.
Am I correct to say, Mr. Van der Gaar, that you never smoked in the house when your parents were at home?
Correct.
Do I understand correctly from your evidence with regards to the pair of shoes, the loafers, that you actually hid your cigarettes in the shoes behind the stairs?
Well, I kept my shoes there. I kept a pack of cigarettes. I would usually go for a walk with Sasha and then have some cigarettes on the walk.
So, were your parents aware of the fact that you smoked?
Yes, but they didn't want me smoking in front of Marley.
And what about smoking inside? Was that agreeable to them?
No.
Now, you've already testified, and according to the DNA evidence available, it appears that you, on the morning of 27th of January 2015, in actual fact, smoked 3 cigarettes in the house.
Correct.
And you smoked those 3 cigarettes whilst at the kitchen counter?
Correct. I lit the first one at the kitchen counter while the emergency call was dialing, and I think pretty much as those finished, I would light another one.
So, do I understand you correctly? You smoked them in short succession, one after the other?
Yes.
And if I have regard to Exhibit A, the photographs, photos 40 to 44, it doesn't even appear that you used an ashtray or some sort of substitute there.
No, I didn't. There was no ashtray around. I suppose I probably would have used one if we had, but we didn't really maintain ashtrays, especially not inside the house. I think it just fell on the ground. I don't think I was very concerned with ash on the floor of the house.
Not just the ash, Mr. van Breda, the almost finished cigarettes, the finished cigarette butts, it's also not put out, it's merely dropped to the ground.
Yeah, I distinctly remember dropping one and not picking it up, just lighting another. My hands were shaking so much that it just fell out of my hand and burnt out on the ground.
It's something that Sergeant Pleinans remarked on when he observed the scene, that those cigarettes were just dropped there. The ash, the cigarettes, and again, just nodding.
Correct.
Why did you act in that way? Not using a substitute at least on ash, letting this ash fall on the floor, letting the cigarette butts fall on the floor.
I was smoking in order to be able to communicate on the phone. I was very much struggling to speak at that point. I was breathing. I cannot speak under these circumstances. So smoking to calm myself enough to be able to speak over the phone is what I was doing. I was not concerned about the cleanliness of the house.
So it's not a question of you being of the view that parents are dead in any event. What does it matter whether they like you smoking in the house or not?
No. I mean, we actually had smoked in the house before. For Rudy's birthday, he got a pair of cigarettes, a pair of nice cigars from a friend of his, and we had them in the house, me, Rudy, Dad and Mom, while Morley was at a friend's.
That is a special occasion.
Yes.
And you just testified that the parents didn't like you smoking in the house.
Yes. I think these are circumstances that would have proven understandable.
That would have, excuse me, would have?
And I think they would have understood.
Would have understood.
Yes.
And do I understand you correctly that you, in actual fact, smoked 3 cigarettes while sitting at the counter?
Yes.
When we moving on to the, are you okay?
No, yeah.
Mr. Van Breda, I know you have a problem sitting there.
No, okay.
Thank
you.
Moving on to the events in the early hour of 27th of January 2015, Mr. Van Breda, the attack. How many attackers did you in actual fact see in your room during the whole incident?
At least one.
Mr. Van Breda, you say at least one. Is it one? Is it 2? How many did you see in your room?
One person at a time.
I don't understand your evidence. What do you mean by one person at a time?
As far as I can recall, it was the same person that left my room and came back into the room. But given the amount of certainty you seem to be asking, I can't be that certain.
So do you not trust your own memory whether it was the same person or not?
No, I do trust
So,
I mean, I don't.
you, as far as you remember, it was the same person who went out and came back.
Correct.
So then why say at least one person came into? Why try to create the impression that it might have been two different people?
Because I heard the voice of someone else in the house later on.
That's why I specifically asked you, sir, how many attackers came into your house, into your room. I didn't ask you how many attackers were in your house.
Yes.
Okay. So, according to you, how many attackers were in your room?
At least one.
You still stick with the
one.
Is it at least one or one?
It's at least one.
You're still not willing to say it was just the one that you saw that went out and came back in?
I don't think we can be 100% sure of that.
Then you say your memory is fallible.
I'm saying what anyone who saw what I saw would not be able to tell.
All the prosecutors tried to get from you, you saw one person.
As far as I recall, yes.
Any idea what made the attacker come to the boys' room as you described it?
I would be speculating, but it was the first room on the way upstairs.
And at the time when he entered the room, you were in the bathroom, which is to the right-hand end of the door, to the right-hand end of the room, correct?
Correct.
And you had partially closed the door.
Correct.
And Rudy was in his bed, fast asleep.
Correct.
The room was dark.
Correct.
Why did they not just grab what he can and exit the room? Would you in any way be able to tell or enlighten this court as to why he would then go on and attack Rudy in his bed?
No, I don't know.
And
so the intruders targeted Rudy.
It appears so.
Can you think of any reason?
No, I can't. I can't, my lord.
And at all times, at all times, since you first noted the sounds coming from the bedroom, up until you called the 107 emergency number on the landline, according to your memory, you only ever saw this one attacker.
Correct.
So, during the attack on your family, it was the same number of attackers with the same weapon, one excludes the knife, all the time that you observed him or them.
Correct.
And this person also executed the same type of attack on the rest of your family members, using the axe to execute blows to the head or the head area.
Correct.
And the attack that you observed, this person executing on your brother, you've now already said that he was in his bed, he was asleep.
Correct.
Okay. And if I infer from your evidence in chief, he attacked him with an axe.
Correct.
Can you please, Mr. Kandradar, demonstrate to the court, given where the attacker stood in what manner, did he execute the attack on Rudy? that you were able to see. And so as to not to, my Lord, we have the originals of Exhibits 1 and 2 in court. But so as not to have anybody in themselves, we had replicas made, which is the same size if the court wants to compare with the originals. Place the originals of Exhibits 1 and 2 on the table, as well as the replicas made from wood. It's a light-weighted wood. If the court is satisfied that they are similar size and shape, may I then use the replicas as
Mr. Witter, what do you think of this?
The cross-examination of the triple murder accused Henry van Breda is underway after the 22-year-old took to the stand in his murder trial for the first time yesterday. He's on today.
Seems to be a similar size of shape, but it seems to be lighter.
Very light, very much lighter.
Good.
Yeah. So, I would submit your Lordship's remarks with respect to the current agreement.
Van Breda, please. Exhibit 1 before the court, the acts. As far as you can remember and what you observed that night, in what manner did the attacker execute the attack on your brother? Can you please demonstrate?
As far as I could see, when the lights switched on, the attacker was facing, if the attacker was standing in between our two beds, with Rudy lying on his bed here, in the situation with if the attacker's facing this way, I'm behind him, and he was swinging the axe down upon Rudy.
Firstly, to get your posture and your positions correctly, sir, is that how you intend to demonstrate that if the bed is standing across in front of you, or from left to right, I'm sorry, I'm getting to the directions, from left to right in front of you, he's standing almost at an angle to the bed, or was he facing the bed directly?
At an angle.
At an angle. And the type of motion that he used? So it is a swinging motion from above your head, but not swinging down across from you, but more somewhat to the side.
Correct. Not that that's a representation of every movement he made, but that was.
So it made different movements.
Yes.
Different in the sense of the angle, or different from where he stood, or what changed between the different blows?
Yeah, I would say we would still give the same general description as swinging from overhead, etc.
So it's not, I just want to make sure I understand you correctly, it's not that the attacker changed his position in relation to where Rudy was on the bed, or that he executed a different type of movement?
It looked like similar movements, my lord.
And this would, in actual fact, then fit with the injuries that was noted on Rudy's post-mortem report. on the side of his head?
I've tried to avoid the. Sorry. I've tried to avoid looking at the post-mortem reports, but I accept that.
And again, I'm just referring to what you observed. Excuse me, you never observed the attacker using the knife on duty.
No, I didn't see the knife until it was present in our struggle.
And at all times during execution of this attack on Rudy, did you remain in the same position?
I can't be sure about that, but I can mostly sort of recall what I saw. And so from where it seems that I was in the room, from what I saw, it seems like I stayed in that corner of the room as I've described. But specifically where I moved around, I can't recall.
But given that you testified that you were in your room, you did not stay in the bathroom.
No, I didn't stay in the bathroom.
That much you are clear about?
Yes.
As far as you know, during this, up until this point, did the attacker notice you in the room?
I didn't notice him noticing me until he was already coming at me.
Because it would be strange if he had noticed you and he just ignored you.
It would be strange, but on another level, I did shout for help, so I think he must have been aware.
Exactly when did you shout for help, sir?
As soon as I saw that the sounds that I heard was an attack on Rudy.
And the sound, the shouting for help, the sounds you made, that did not attract his attention or distract him from executing the attack on Rudy?
It didn't seem to, no.
He did not, for instance, turn around after having attacked Rudy and attack you?
No, he didn't.
The boys' room, as you describe it, is not that big.
Ah.
The two beds are fairly close to one another.
Correct.
So had he been standing between the two beds and you in the corner of the room at the end of, foot end of your bed, you would not have been that far away from him.
No.
Yet he does not attack you.
Correct.
He ignores you even though you are shouting or making sounds to get help.
Correct.
What exactly did you do to shout for get help for? Because you, in your evidence in chief, you said something, I shouted for help in one way or another. I made some sort of noise. What exactly did you do, sir?
I can't recall exactly what. Sorry? I can't recall exactly what noise I made. Can't recall deciding to.
You actually made a noise?
Yes, I did. It was, from what I remember, just a random shout. But it did then. Immediately after that, my dad came into the room, so I presume that he did hear that.
So whatever noise, the random shout that you did, was loud enough to attract the attention of your father?
It appeared so, yes.
At that stage, as far as you were concerned, there was only one intruder that you had seen.
Correct.
So, well, I would just ask this. What do you and Juganda and your father try to overpower the
My Lord, I wish we did. I wish we did. I wish we did, my Lord.
No, I know but is there some explanation why you didn't defensively try to protect yourselves? Protect your brother, protect your brother. Try to overpower the treaty.
I think I was just too scared to do anything.
You see, Mr. Van Brugge, that is also something that I wanted to ask you a bit later on is, at this point in time when you shouted for help, you now have no reason not to expect that somebody would come to your aid because your father is there just down the passage.
Correct.
You actually have the desired effect of him coming to your bedroom.
Yes.
And he also appears to move towards the attacker, or where the attacker was, in the general vicinity.
Yeah, he immediately went for the attacker.
He went for him, actually.
Yes.
So now, you're no longer alone against this axe-wielding attacker.
Momentarily, yes.
Your father is there.
I missed you there, sorry.
Momentarily.
Why did you not join your father and come at him from behind? Because he's been ignoring you up until that time.
I was too scared, my Lord.
So then I assume your father was also scared.
I presume you was, yes.
My Lord, I'm going to move over to a little bit of a different point here.
The only way to pour the perfect beer, this professional barman would tell you, is into a glass tilted at exactly 45 degrees. Oh, bless you. Bless you, sir. Bless you again. Well, we'd say the perfect way to pour a beer is at this angle, straight into your mouth. Tops its bar. Good beer, good advice, no Ponzi beer stuff.
Here we are witnessing the beginning of the end of the apartheid system.
If you did a paternity test on our constitution, whose DNA would come up? Not Nelson Mandela, not F.W. de Klerk, Oliver Tambo.
When I was passing the casino, I said, that edge came, said, I'll just try, you never know. You might go home with 80,000, times 4 the amount that you have. And that stupid day, I lost all my money.
Never allow glamorous lifestyles to push you beyond your means.
The awakening moment was that 2007, when I left my children alone. I realized this is hurting me.
Ask for professional help if gambling is controlling you. Know when to stop.
I faced reality that, for you there's no quick reach, so you just have to work hard. So it's gone.
For all your uplifting stories, catch Bupilong every Friday at 17:30.
Welcome back. If you've just joined us, we just came out as Henry van Breda's cross-examination at the axe murder that happened out in Stellenbosch a few years ago. We now go to Parliament to carry on with what's been going on with Eskom being looked at. Let's go there now, live.
Acrimonious relationship existed, because to me it sounds like it was a fabricated acrimonious relationship, because it suited certain individuals to have an acrimonious relationship.
I don't think I can comment on that. It was prior to there. When I got there, it was a relatively acrimonious relationship. I can't comment as to how that started or when it started or whether it was fabricated.
Can you tell me specifically between which parties this acrimonious relationship existed?
So I think between the senior executive of Eskom and between the senior executive of the former shareholders of Optimum Glencore.
And just, it's all in line with this question. Do you think that there was a deliberate attempt by Eskom to ensure that the business rescue that you'd put on the table failed, so that Tegeta would be able to come in and purchase the mine?
I think that's a very difficult question. I think that certainly we ran out of options in terms of what is available within a business rescue. Generally, you try and restructure the affairs of the company and retain the structure as it is. As I detailed at the start, that process of about 2 months was challenging in terms of just trying to get constructive discussion going around restructuring it. The next phase was to try and approach buyers to see if you could change the paradigm and saying, well, if there is an unfair or an acrimonious relationship between the existing shareholders, if we change that dynamic, i.e. get a new shareholder, would that change the dynamic? And I think that we saw a number of suitors not able to come to terms with Eskom, which left us effectively with one party.
Chair, and my very last point on this. In this business rescue structure that you put forward, and with your knowledge of the South African financial laws, what laws, in your opinion, and this isn't your personal opinion, this is in your professional opinion, what laws do you think have been breached in the way the business rescue and the purchase of Tegeta, Optimum by Tegeta? What laws do you think have been breached or broken?
I'm a chartered accountant, so I'm certainly not a lawyer, so I do not believe I'm qualified to answer that question.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Mr. Gungubel.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Masdi, for your availability. I think Ms. Honorable Mazon has raised some issues that I wanted to raise, but there's one point I want to further follow. This question of the penalty quality of coal, and coal being supplied from the similar mine, if I'm correct to date, or post optimum target period. I think I'm not sure your answer is, because the question was, if we were penalized for the state of coal that you were presenting that time, your supply, what has changed in the current coal, in the coal post penalty that you are receiving? Can you make a point there?
So not all coal is created equal. I think that you are able to beneficiate coal, and once again, I'm not a technical person, but certainly in my limited knowledge, you are able to beneficiate coal to get it within specification, either by washing it or by handling it. One of the major components was the sizing issue. So certainly you are able to amend and change specifications. Throughout the period of the business rescue, we, as I mentioned previously, had an interim agreement with Eskom where they effectively gave us less stringent quality criteria for the period of the business rescue. Post the business rescue, I can't comment.
Less stringent as compared to the time the penalty was charged?
Yes, I think so.
What was the purpose of less stringent doing this?
We entered into an interim agreement largely around to amend the payment terms. So we were traditionally paid on 30 days, but given in business rescue we needed a bit more liquidity, we amended that to 7 days. And they agreed, and I'll have to get the exact details of the wording of it, but agreed something to the tune of not enforcing penalties with regards to substandard coal. Of course, we try to deliver coal within specification, and it really depends on the seam at that point in time.
Do you have a detailed knowledge of the specific deficit during the charging of penalty and compared to the time the requirements were less stringent?
Not on me, but I would have that information available.
Wait, did you have it?
Yes.
So, during your less stringent period, were you giving quality then that was lesser than during penalty?
The issue relates primarily to the sizing of the coal. So the quality of the coal was of sufficient quality in terms of the calorific value, in terms of the ash and the moisture. It was really around a percentage of product that is sized differently. So the coal was of a good quality.
So, Optimum had pre-stated specifics. And when the penalty was charged, does it mean they were not meeting those stated?
Certainly that was the allegation levied by Eskom in terms of that.
Own assessment, was that the situation?
I think it's not a static position. I think the quality of coal changes. So certainly there would have been periods where it would have not been within specification, but there would have been periods when it would have been within specification. It's really on a continuous basis samples to ensure. It's not a simple question.
Okay, let's come to Pembani. Pembani, you seem to have reached an agreement with Pembani to buy. What was the attitude of Eskom?
So we had signed certainly a term sheet. I was then not party to their discussions with Eskom, but it appears, and the communication that we got was that they were not able to come to terms with Eskom, and as a result, our transaction with them failed.
But the first interface was between yourselves as rescuers with Pembani.
That's correct.
And you assessed Pembani.
That's correct.
And you thought that Pembani was competent to buy.
That's correct.
Was it not important to find out Eskom why their position in spite of your assessment?
I think Eskom had made their position to us pretty clear in terms of the renegotiation of the contract and the payment of the penalties, and their position was that unless a party came to the table that would take the contract as it was, warts and all, and would commit to the penalty, they would not want to engage further. So we certainly did get Eskom's view on why that is. You'd have to ask Pembani in terms of why they withdrew, but I suspect it as a result of them not being able to meet those criteria.
In your view, do you think Eskom unfairly increased stringence of measures, or what exactly happened, knowing what Eskom told you?
I think they were applying what they believe to be their legal position. I can't comment as to whether that's common practice or not, but certainly they took a pretty hardline attitude towards the enforcement of the agreement.
What was their attitude towards Tegeta?
I think their attitude
later.
I think their attitude was that on the basis that Tegeta could meet their requirements, they would be prepared to engage with them.
Requirements are stated with Pembani.
Requirements are stated in terms of the contract, yes.
I'm saying as stated with Pembani.
I'm not party to their conversations with Pembani, but
they told you the reasons. If I heard you, you're saying Eskom told you the reason why they could not get into a deal with Pembani.
Eskom didn't. Pembani told us. Eskom had stated...
I thought you were saying Pembani did not share this with you, but Eskom told you.
So Eskom never spoke to us with specific reference to Pembani. They simply said any party that you bring in terms of a corporate transaction would need to meet these criteria.
They told you the criteria.
They did indeed.
They did?
They did.
Is it the same criteria they gave to Tagata?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Paragraph 6. What was the basis of that agreement?
Sorry, Honourable Member, in terms of the
10
statement.
December 2015. You are saying in your last sentence, the business rescue practitioners were party to these agreements. What was the basis of that agreement?
So the agreements are, once again, everybody's...
If I'm correct, we're dealing with Tagata now.
Correct. So
in that paragraph.
That is correct.
What was the basis of that agreement? I'm asking this question because later there were problems.
Understood. So this is the agreement that effectively gives effect to the sale transaction. So this is an agreement that we've signed in our capacities as the business rescue practitioner of Optimum Coal Holdings, detailing the mechanisms for the sale of these businesses to Tagata. So this is effectively the sale of share and claims agreement that is
Selling to Tagata.
Selling it to Tagata, that's correct.
Am I correct to say you would have assessed the condition of all the parties, in particular the prospective purchaser in this instance? Were you happy with the situation of the prospective purchaser, which was Tagata?
I think what we catered for within that agreement is that any uncertainty that we had needed to be dealt with before that condition became...
What were the uncertainties here?
I think that we had dealt with, as I said, our constituents as a business rescue practitioner were all effectively conditions precedent to the agreement. So it required, sorry, I just want to finish and then you can do, the bank consortium were required to effectively approve of the transaction. Eskom were required to approve of the transaction. The Competitions Commission were required to approve of the transaction, and the Department of Mineral Resources were required. So we had done an element of due diligence, but before the transaction closed, it did require the sign-off of all of those parties.
Am I correct to say there must be a document detailing the sale of agreement and those, if I'm correct, those suspensive conditions? Do you have a document that details that?
The Honourable Member, it's in the pack as well, so I'm happy to go to that. Absolutely, it was one of the specific documents that we've... So once again, on Chair, the colours, I'm not sure where it is. It appears to be right at the back of my pack, so kind of the last one. It's got a worksman's attorney in the top right corner, and it is styled Sale of Shares and Claims Agreement. I think it's the last one, Honourable Member.
Yes.
So if I can take you to effectively paragraph number 3 of that agreement. Details the suspensive conditions that are required in order to take this to a final and binding agreement. If I can take you to the relevant ones.
Sorry, Mr. Marsden, can you give him a chance to get to the agreement?
My apologies,
as you are
Chair.
Going through?
Oh, thank you.
It's page.
Okay.
It's
page 16 to everyone.
So I'm actually going to go to page 17 to highlight these particular issues. So in clause 3.1.3, the proposed transaction is approved by 3.1.3.1, the lenders and the security agent, 3.1.3.2, the Competitions Authority, 3.1.3.3, the Minister of Mineral Resources, and then 3.1.4 effectively deals with Eskom's consent.
Is there do you have the financial suspensive condition there?
So I will get it to you shortly. It's embedded in the 3.1.3.1, whereby the lenders, in order to give their consent to the transaction, remember ultimately they were going to be the recipient of the funds, required, in order to meet that condition, required a proof of funding. If I can just maybe then take you, and it explains why the letter is not addressed to myself. As the practitioner, also included in your pack ultimately is that letter. And that's why it's addressed to the bank consortium as opposed to myself. It was required in order to meet that particular condition. So that is quite near the front. It's the second, or I think it's the third portion of your folder, and it's a letter from the Bank of Baroda addressed to the banking consortium.
We go back then to Pembani. I want to ask you this question. Having been satisfied with the ability of Pembani, were there similar suspensive conditions? Was Pembani meeting all the requirements? To what degree were they meeting them as compared to Tegeta?
So a couple of points on that issue. We never got to the stage with Pembani of having a comprehensive legal agreement signed. We simply had a term sheet signed, and certainly the conditions that would have been included in the term sheet would have had very similar issues to these, in terms of particularly being able to deal with the consents required from Eskom in terms of 3.1.4. Another important consideration is that Pembani were at that point in time looking at OCM as opposed to at OCH. So there were differences between the transactions.
In your view as business, with the academic experience and practice that you have, what was more cost effective for Eskom? Was it the rescue of Optimum or dealing with an alternative supplier?
I think you'd have to ask that question to Eskom, and I suppose it would be a little bit like gazing into a crystal ball, because there's a short-term cost, there's a medium-term cost, and there's a long-term cost, and the story is not fully played out yet. I think that the contract to supply Hendrina, which is effectively the onerous contract, only expires at the end of December 2018, and I suppose we can only fully quantify which was the best alternative if and when that contract is completed in its entirety.
Last two questions is to deal with actually in the prepayment, just for my clarity, who is the payee and who is the payer here?
From what I understand in the Public Protector's report, the payer was Eskom, and the receiver, or the pay, well, I'm getting my names wrong. Eskom paid it, and Tegeta got it, not OCM.
Okay. And then the time Tegeta got it, you said at that time they were not owners of the company, of the mining.
That's correct. If, going to that critical period around the 11th of April and the approval. And
do you remember at what point was ownership executed, ownership transfer executed?
So the closing date of the transaction, I'm sure the evidence leader can correct me if I'm incorrect, but it was either the 14th or the 15th of April. So the last remaining condition...
It was after the 586 million.
That is my understanding, correct.
Okay, let's come now to the... So my last question is, the police gave you, you received acknowledgement on the July 2016, and then affidavit May 2017, and then another affidavit 2017 July. If you, using your own assessment, what was material distinctions between the requirement of May and that of July in 2017?
The affidavits that I signed in terms of the original application and the further affidavit in July 2017 is almost negligible. They're almost identical.
In other words, those have got no material difference.
That's correct.
Didn't it frustrate you?
A little bit, yes.
What did it make you to think of the law enforcement agents with regard to this matter?
I think I would have expected, even if my suspicions were incorrect, at least the opportunity to present the position.
But
this is I merely had suspicions when I made the application. Certainly not any accusations, but I think it would have been incumbent, or I would have expected, at least to have some clarity from me, from the various authorities.
Lastly, how did this thought aggravate with the recent email and the new investigator?
As I said previously, I remain here to assist the authorities in whichever capacity I can. To the extent that my suspicions are unfounded, I would sleep well at night. To the event that they are, that's really for the...
As a South African citizen, not just as a business rescuer, which is your profession.
Yes, so...
I move from a point that you are a South African and the future of your children is in this country. Here is an affidavit of July 2017, no material difference with of May 2017, no material difference in July 2017, recently an email and a new investigator. I'm talking to you as a South African. How does this make you feel?
I would prefer to have slightly more efficient services.
You're welcome, Honorable Tseli. So 10.
Morning, Mr. Mazda. The meeting of the 11th of April, 2016, that you said approved the 586 million. Didn't you have any interest of knowing who those representatives of Eskom who were part of that meeting?
I would now, but I was unaware of it at the time, obviously. I was not, sorry, Honourable Member, I was not present of the meeting and I was not aware that the meeting was happening, so I could hardly have been expected to have an interest, I think.
The meeting of the 24th of November, which was followed by the other meeting in December, and you are saying it was chaired by Eskom. I'm interested in knowing who was chairing that meeting from Eskom.
The meeting of the 24th of November?
And the other one of December, I forgot the date. The one following the meeting of the 24th of November.
The 24th was chaired by Machela Koko. And I'm not sure of the other meeting. If you give me the date, I could. The 24th of the 11th. 2015.
Yeah, you spoke about the one of the 24th and you said the December meeting. I don't remember the date. That's the one that I was talking about. Yeah, you just said the December meeting.
I'm not sure which meeting you refer to. We signed the agreement in December, but we would not have been...
Now, that's Parliament's Public Enterprise Committee, of course, inquiring into Eskom's corporate governance. A briefing, of course, the purchase of Optimum coal mine, as well as the payments made to Trillion. We heard that earlier yesterday, millions of rand being spent. But right now, let's take a break from that and go back to court in Cape Town, where Henry van Breda, the axe murder accused, is on the stand.
Current speaking officer. And I think it's clear from the statement that this is wording from... Okay, well, it was certainly a misrepresentation of what I had told them. Whether they intentionally did it is not what I'm saying.
You are certain you never told him that you were scared to go out of the bar?
Correct.
And you are very sure today that you did in fact stand in that in the area of that corner of the bedroom?
Yes.
You see in your plea explanation, you said in paragraph 24 of Exhibit J, I initially stood frozen. I also cannot recall whether I remained in the same position throughout the attack on Rudy. That is, after you had opened the bathroom door.
Yes.
You say that I initially stood frozen. I also cannot recall whether I remained in the same position throughout. You never mentioned that you went out of the bathroom. You just mentioned I opened the bathroom door.
Yes, but I did go out the bathroom door, and
So today you are now sure that you did exit the bathroom.
yes, because of, as I said, it's based on how I remember seeing the room.
So now, Mr. Van Breda, this is also something that is, since you've testified as something new, that you actually left the bathroom. It's not in your statement to the police.
The statement is not. I put the statement to one of the previous statements, this is Captain Baird, as part of my instructions, so my own colleague's statement, this, and suggesting that this is a recent fabrication inspection claim, was placed on record in the state's case already, where my client position was.
Lord, I was still busy making the statement to the witness.
Okay, wait till the police statement. Mr. Botha can object again.
I remember what was put to Captain Hubert. Mr. Van Breda, in your statement, you mentioned, although you say it wasn't, you never said that, the sequence of events are that you remained in the bathroom. In the plea explanation, the sequence of events relayed there also create the impression at the very least that you remained in the bathroom.
That was not intended to be the impression that. It was not intended to be the impression created by my plea explanation, because that has never been my version.
It was, I agree with your counsel, it was put to Captain Hubert when he testified specifically with regards, if my memory does serve me correct, about the lack of blood spatter around the bathroom door and the door itself. He was questioned on if you were inside of the room, that did explain why there was blood spatter on your shorts. So I just want to make sure again, is it your version now in court that you in actual fact stood in that little corner?
Yes, I viewed the room from that corner. Also, there wouldn't have been enough space for me to be inside the bathroom and still be able to see what's going on in the room.
Because the bathroom door, as we saw when the court visited the house, it opens to the inside of the bathroom.
Correct.
So you would not have been able to stand behind the door and still see into the bedroom.
Correct.
And you also agree that had you been standing in the bathroom and blood spatter from the attack on your brother and or your father ended up on you, one would have expected blood spatter on the surrounding bathroom, the wall, and the door.
Yes.
As far as you can of the bedroom during the sequence of the events as they unfolded until the attacker left the bedroom the first time? Did you remain, or can you not remember what you did?
I still remember seeing the room from that angle, so I'm not acutely aware of where my body was, but I know that that's
Well, it's still the cross-examination of Henry van Breda taking place in Cape Town. There he's accused, of course, killing 3 of his family members. It seems like we've lost that link. That's the court case in the High Court in Cape Town, currently on the stand, Henry van Breda. Let's now see if we can fix up that link, and then we'll come back to it. But let's now go back to Eskom, where they currently under with Parliament looking at Optimum Coal Mine and the contracts that were concluded between Eskom.
The then Minister, Mr. Ramaphosa, to suspend all Glencore's mining licenses. A massive, again, the implication for me is that there is pressure from Eskom against Glencore. That he refuses to do. The minister is then fired, and a new minister is put into position, a new minister that we now know is more Gupta aligned. And in the time that the business rescue, which you would now have knowledge, you might not have had knowledge of Minister Ramaphosa, but in September, the new mines minister applies Section 54 stoppages at all the Glencore mines, including Optimum, which is the one under business rescue. So you should have been aware of that, and was it a concern of yours? Why is this additional political pressure now on Optimum Mine from outside? Please.
Thank you very much. Once again, I can't comment around Glencore mines, but certainly within the Optimum Coal Mine, we did receive a stoppage notice. It wasn't a 54, I think it was a 92, right at the start of the business rescue process. So literally within 2 or 3 days of being appointed. That stoppage related to a technical infringement, and we were able to get the stoppage uplifted within a couple of days. Certainly heard all the stories around pressure being exerted on Glencore. Once again, not within my personal knowledge, unable to comment on it.
And we also know that Tegeta started to get involved, and they were doing small mining activities. Brackfontein and those mining activities increased, and there was a problem with their quality. Would have that been any bearing with your involvement with Tegeta, their history with Eskom as well, and the fact that some of their stockpiles were rejected? Did you have knowledge of those Tegeta mines prior to this whole engagement? Let me just be more specific. Whilst you were a business rescue practitioner, you're approached by Tegeta. You know that Tegeta is already involved with Eskom and other mines, and there have been problems with those mines. Was that an issue?
Certainly came into our consideration. I think that we took really a couple of things out of it. First of all, I think Optimum had an excellent management team in place and would operate under our control, so they certainly would not have any ability to influence that. The second aspect was important to us in terms of they were an existing Eskom customer, and we thought that as a result of that, Eskom would have knowledge of them, so to the extent we brought a transaction, they would at least be an approved vendor, if I can use that terminology.
So we are aware that there's political involvement. We're also aware, in terms of the Public Protector's report, of Mr. Molefe meeting with the Guptas. Now, that might not have been in your knowledge at that stage, but was it not strange to you why the negotiations on the coal service agreement that seemed to be proceeding well, and when Mr. Molefe comes in, it suddenly stopped? And there's suddenly this acrimonious attitude with a company that's had a long-term contract of 25 years, and as suddenly you, as in business rescue, did you not find this strange in your, and again tying up with pressure that we know the Public Protector has said that the conduct of the Eskom board was solely to benefit of Tegeta in awarding contracts to them?
So I certainly think we walked into a pretty difficult hornet's nest in terms of the relationships. Obviously no commentary around the prior engagement and knowledge, but certainly it became quite apparent to us and quite clear that a transaction that involved a simple reshuffling of the contract with Glencore as a shareholder was unlikely to meet approval of Eskom. I think that the hard stance that the executive of Eskom took at the point was, at the time, something that certainly could stand up to commercial muster. I mean, somebody pushing back against Glencore is unusual. Somebody insisting on enforcing in a contract that in the short term would have been to the benefit of Eskom to get coal at the short-term supply. The manoeuvring of Eskom to have the good and the bad part of the business included in the transaction made commercial rationale to us. Somebody was playing hardball, and I don't think that there's an issue with that. In fact, I think it probably had some commercial sense to it. I think where the picture starts to get a little bit more murky is post the facts that have come out post the event.
If I understand you correctly, that the negotiations were done and there was commercial sense to that, but why would it then be necessary to have a meeting in Switzerland with the Minister of Mining? You obviously don't have knowledge about that. Mining, the Guptas, and Glencore, to almost put a minister acting in that capacity, which is unheard of, if it was commercially sound. Why would that be necessary at all?
So I think it had some commercial sense from Eskom's point of view, is kind of why I dictated those items. Correct, I don't know what happened in Switzerland. I certainly know that an offer that was capable of being concluded arrived relatively shortly after that meeting. I'm not sure what a minister's portfolio is meant to be. It does appear to be unusual, but I don't have a lot of knowledge of that particular meeting.
Well, it's again political interference in this issue, which is very clear. Can I just ask you, what I'm trying to understand is, you've got OCM is in dire straits. There's a penalty added, which actually puts them straight into business rescue, the 2.1 billion. But had that negotiation taken place on the hardship agreement continued, and had that penalty been settled, and then we now subsequently know that the loss-making contract was for the supply of Hendrina, and we now know that the Hendrina power station was reduced, and in fact the OCM coal sold to Tegeta went to Arno at a radically increased price. Had you had that option, surely even prior to business rescue there would have been no reason for business rescue at all.
I think that option was tabled prior to business rescue, in terms of effectively switching some of the export product to the supplier to Arnott. Once again, I think we were looking for any options from Eskom, and in the first 60 days, as I detailed at the start, we made a number of different proposals to Eskom in terms of the continued supply of product to Hendrina. And once again, going to the prepayment issue, the coal that was supplied via Tegeta to Arnott came from the Optimum coal mine. So certainly that would have been an option that was available, but we were not able to conclude any of those.
But that is what is happening at the moment, as we now know subsequently. So that is how the Tegeta / Oak Bay / Guptas have managed to change a loss-making mine into a profitable mine by moving the coal, which was what you proposed at the beginning, which wasn't accepted. So it seems it's very clear why the public protector came out with her damning findings that Eskom did not act in the best interests in terms of various provisions of the Public Finance Management Act as a public company as well. And we know the cost of coal has in fact escalated significantly. So, Chair, I just wanted to point out one other thing, and that is the Pembani deal. That contract is referred to in the Public Protector's report as well, and there was an issue there that during the negotiations, according to the Public Protector, it related to the consideration of the penalty and the consideration of the coal supply agreement. Exactly the same terms that Tegeta got to look at that. But I think that the distinction that you make is that they were only looking at the one element and not the whole total. So it seems very clear to me that this whole deal was structured both from a political perspective and from an Eskom perspective to make sure that Tegeta received the benefit and received the mines at the end of the day, and then as soon as they got the mines, to then make sure that OCM was a profit-making company. Would you be in agreement with that?
I think that's the conclusion that the Public Protector came to.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
You're most welcome. Honorable Dlamini, it's your turn.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mr. Mazdi, I just want to get the dates correctly. You're saying you received a term sheet, or you signed a term sheet with Pembani, right? That is the first company that you engaged with. Is that correct?
That's correct, Honorable.
Okay, fine. And then when did you start speaking to Tegeta?
So they had approached the company prior to Business Rescue. They approached us prior to us accepting the Pembani transaction, and then we really started to engage with them once the Pembani deal had fallen over.
So the formal engagement, it was only when Pembani deal came, and then it said it's not going.
We'd had a variety of other interactions with them. We'd obviously signed non-disclosure agreements, as well as provided high-level information on the asset. I think I remember a site visit done in September where they viewed the mine. But in terms of actually moving towards closing a transaction and formal engagements, you're correct, that only happened once the Pembani deal had fallen over.
Is that the norm? That I come to you and then we make an offer and then we sign a term sheet, and then on the other side you are doing site visits with someone who wants to make a counter offer on what I'm doing?
It's certainly not normal, and once we'd signed the term sheet, there was an exclusivity in that. So the second we signed the term sheet until the term sheet failed, there would have been no interaction between the parties.
So why did you do the site visits and all these other informal engagements with the Tegeta?
It was a question of timing. So the site visit was prior to the signing of the term sheet. So there would have been engagement with a number of parties prior to it. We would have selected the bidder that made the most sense to us. At that point in time, we would have, and it was included in the agreement, exclusivity, so we would have stopped all of the discussions until such time as that term sheet ultimately failed.
Okay, you mentioned there was a shortfall of 600 million, and then you're saying you were made aware either through the Kataprank program that Eskom paid 585 to Tegeta, and the reason for that, I think you said through the interview, if I got you correctly, the reason for that was that they wanted to recapitalize the operations, improve the cash flows as well as operations. Is that correct? Where did you get this information so that I can capture it correctly?
So you're quite correct. The reasons that Mr. Hauer gave in his interview with Carte Blanche was exactly as you've stated, that the company was in business rescue and needed cash quicker. And the second item being the mine had a number of drag lines, large equipment that is used in the mining process, that needed to be recommissioned. They were on site, they didn't have to buy them, but they needed to be recommissioned in order to increase the production such that they could supply in terms of the agreement, or such that we could supply together in terms of the agreement. But the amount of cash required for that is in the region of about 10 million rand. It wasn't more than that.
Right. Then that's what happened on the interview by Mr. Hauer. When did you hand over this mine, the full operation? You're saying in 31st August. Which year? This year?
Of last year, 2016.
Right. In terms of your knowledge, did that money come through to do exactly what the interview was, or the owner of the mine saying, we requested 585 from Eskom so that we can come and recapitalize the mine? Did that money come there while you were still involved in the operation?
The money definitely did not come to the mine in the period that I was until the 31st of August.
And Did you report that to the authorities? Is it part of your...
When we became aware that a prepayment had been made, we reviewed the bank statements, and obviously that money had not flowed directly to the mine. We had supplied, as the mine, coal to Tegeta, and we had obviously received certain payments from Tegeta for the supply of mine. But that is on a 30-day account based on deliveries. The prepayment amount, as that, certainly did not come to the mine.
So, Nazimo, on that record that you got from Catablind was lying?
It would seem so.
And that is included on your statement to the Hawks?
That's correct.
Okay. Lastly, you're saying the 585 was paid to Tegeta, and then it's a Bank of Baroda that wrote to the other banks to say we've got the money. And the money was paid on the agreed date before the cut-off date of the deal by the Bank of Baroda, the 2.1 billion.
So just to, you're correct, but I just want to break it down into a couple of items. So we had received a letter of comfort from the Bank of Baroda that Tegeta had sufficient funds in order to discharge the 2.15. So that's correct. We then, on the closing date, so the 11th came, they said they were short, we said no, or the bank said no. The money then arrived on, I think, the 14th or the 15th. That money was paid into the escrow accounts, and the money did flow from, I think, a Bank of Baroda account. They use a net bank platform, but it did flow, and the purchase price was discharged in full. We only became aware of the source of those funds when all of this stuff came to the fore, and that's why we made the submission.
Finally, what is Nazim Hoa's role in the company? Is he CEO? What is his role on this Tegeta Holdings now?
So he was our principal point of contact throughout the discussions. I stand under correction, but I believe he was the Chief Executive Officer of Oak Bay Holdings.
Okay, thank you. That was my last question.